So are you someone who is thinking about buying a home here in Knoxville within the next year or so? Many of you that are in that situation are asking me almost daily about what the cost associated with that purchase is going to be. Closing costs, home inspections, all the things that can be associated with a home purchase. Well, that's what today's video is over, so make sure and stick around to the end. For the purposes of this video, and so that I can give you a reference point, we're going to use the example of buying a $500,000 home in Knox County. And then you can kind of extrapolate that whether you want to go up or down from this number. We're also going to break this video down into two sections. We're going to look at costs that are associated with buying a home, whether you finance it or whether you pay cash. Either way, these are costs you're probably going to have to pay. And then we're going to look at the costs associated with buying a home if you're financing that home. And then at the end of this video, I'm going to kind of give you a total of about what you can expect, whether you fall into either one of those two categories. We're going to start with the expenses that whether you're financing a home or whether you're paying cash, these are common expenses that both categories of buyers will be paying. And we're going to start that category with home inspections. What are the costs associated with those? So here in Knoxville, the East Tennessee area, usually a typical home inspection is going to run about $500. Now I say usually because they vary based on how many square feet's in the home, the age of the home. There's also a couple add-ons that we suggest that you do here. One of those is a radon test. Here in East Tennessee, we have radon. A radon test is going to run you somewhere around $175 to $200. And then you also are going to want to have a termite inspection, pest inspection. That's going to run you usually around $85 or so for that. So when you look at a home inspection, you're really looking at somewhere around $800. An additional item we want to look at when we're talking about home inspections is also a survey. We have very few people who actually get a survey, but if we are in a situation where you do want to have a survey, or for some reason the bank is requiring a survey, that typical survey for a home is anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500. So a second common cost that you're going to have, whether you finance the home that you buy or whether you pay cash for it, is your insurance. Because even if you pay cash, you're going to want to get home insurance. And I get this question a lot: what does home insurance cost here in Knoxville? And once again, this is one of those categories that has a tremendous amount of variables: age of home, location of home, credit of buyer. But I got good news for you. Here in East Tennessee, I call us a no-rider state, meaning honestly, you really just don't need anything but your basic home insurance. And because of that, a home that's about a $500,000 home, that's about 10-year-old-ish, is going to run you somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,500 a year. The next category in common expenses are real estate taxes. If you're buying a home here in Knox County, $500,000 home, that home, our tax rate is 1.554 per $100,000 of assessed value. What does all that mean? It means for a $500,000 home, you're looking at real estate taxes total of about $1,950 or so per year. So you're going to be responsible in some scenarios for the pro rata share of the year that you're purchasing in, and sometimes those are going to be collected as well up front to be paid at closing for your new home. So the state of Tennessee is a title state. We do not use real estate attorneys. They don't have to go in and review like they do in some states. We are a title state. We use title companies to do the transference of properties, to do all the recordings. You pay them to do the title searches, so they go back and do a search of the history on the title. And these title companies have expenses, everything from the title search fees to go back and do that search, to mailing fees, to just their closing fees to handle this whole process. And then on top of that, you're going to want to get title insurance. If you don't know what title insurance is, do some research online, look into it. In my opinion, it's something that's absolute must if you're buying a home. Okay, so now in addition to our title fees, we also have a new category that you're going to need to consider in the coming months and years ahead as things have changed in the industry, and those are buyer agent fees that you may or may not be responsible for paying. So we're going to talk about those next. The seller of any home can still and many times we'll offer what we call cooperative compensation. That means that they're already paying a commission listing fee to the company they have the home listed with. And they are agreeing that company is to share some of that fee with the buyer's agent's company. But that amount now is no longer going to be something that's advertised inside of our MLS systems. Legally, it no longer can be. Just so we're clear, at the current time, if you're working with the Living in Knoxville team, we work off of a 2.5% of the purchase price buyer representation commission or fee. If we're looking at a home and the seller through their listing company is offering a cooperative compensation of 1%, then you would have an additional 1.5% of the purchase price as part of your closing fees that you would have to bring to closing. On a $500,000 home, that's $7,500. All right, so what if you're financing that home? Many of us are financing our homes when we purchase them. It's very typical to have a mortgage on the home. And what fees are associated with your lender? Well, first, let me tell you, they do vary quite a bit. On our closing cost, lender fees, you're going to have everything from an origination fee. What does that mean? That's a fee just for the pleasure of doing business with your mortgage company. It's their money that they make. So a lot of mortgage companies will charge 1% of the loan amount as a fee. If you borrow $400,000 on a $500,000 purchase, that's a $4,000 fee. And then when you're financing, you also have things like appraisal fees. You can do an appraisal on a cash purchase that we've already talked about if you pay cash, but they're going to usually be probably 95% of the time required by your lender. And you pay that expense. And those can run anywhere from $600 to $1,000, depending on, once again, the size of the home, the timeline, all those kinds of things. You will also have to provide lender title insurance. Now, we talked about title insurance in the cash part. On this side of the transaction, if you're financing, they're going to require lender title insurance. So if that's the case, go ahead and make sure and let your title company know that you also want an owner's policy. All they do is add that on top of the lender's policy. It has very little additional cost to you, and it's a really good purchase. You're also going to have the additional expense of recording fees. And obviously, when you go record your warranty deed, there's a tax in the state of Tennessee to that. You'll also then have the tax to record your deed of trust, which is the document that's recorded that gives the lender who's loaning you the money the legal right to take that home if obligations aren't paid in a timely manner contractually as they've been agreed to. What does all of that mean when you're doing financing? Total financing cost on a home that's about $500,000. Now, before I give you this number, I also want to say this does not include something called prepaids, which I'm going to talk about next. But this is just fees associated with a financing transaction. Now, these do include the common fees. So this is not on top of the $5,300 we talked about earlier. This is including that $5,300 plus the additional fees. And in that situation, you're looking at total closing cost fees of about $8,200 to $8,300, or about 1.5% or so off the purchase price. About 50% more. Now, that does not mean that's all you're going to have to bring in cash to closing in addition to your purchase. You also have something called prepaids. They're actually not fees. They're just things that the lender requires you to pay in advance for the year. And then they have something called prepaid interest that you would have to pay for a certain period of time. Those can be substantial. On a $500,000 home that was closing here in the middle of the year or so, in 2024, those prepaids would add up to an additional over $4,500 you would be responsible for bringing in cash to closing, bringing that number from $8,200 to $8,300 to close to over $12,000 that you would need to bring in addition to your purchase price to close on your new home. I hope this video wasn't too confusing. It's a very difficult video to do, as I said, because there's so many variables in it. But make sure and ask about these fees. They are significant. They are important. If you enjoyed the video, give us a thumbs up. If you have any comments, we'd absolutely love to have those below. Till next time, guys, I absolutely can't wait to see you around Knoxville soon.